I'm about to build a gamified training program right before your eyes to prove that in order to make e-learning that's effective and engaging, you don't need a lot of time, budget, templates, fancy graphics, or divine inspiration. And if buy-in is your obstacle to gamification, what I'm about to show you is going to help you with that too. So let's get started. What you're about to see applies to any content, but to demonstrate, I'm going to use a super simple example. So I'm just making up a project here. My fictional client is a bird sanctuary. They want to count every time a bird is observed, so they need their employees to be able to visually identify the species of birds they see. However, in the real world, birds fly away, so they need to be able to ID the bird species even when they see the bird for only 3 seconds. And let's say we've got 30 types of bird that we're interested in. So my learning objective here is, when shown a bird for 3 seconds, the learner will identify its species with 80% accuracy. This here is not arbitrary. It's based on the real world conditions in which they'll have to use that skill. They'll have to be quick in the real world, so they'll have to be quick here too. So now that I have this, let's imagine the learner's journey from complete untrained newbie to reaching this learning objective. And we're going to split that road into 3 parts. First, we introduce them to new information or skill. This final part here is where we'll assess whether they've reached a learning objective, and in the middle we have practice, where we support them in building up that skill in preparation for the final assessment. First thing I do is design the final challenge. This is the task the learner should be able to accomplish if they've reached your learning objective. So I think about how I can test that they've reached it in a way that's as close to the real world conditions as I can make it, but in e-learning. So for a final test here, I figure if I pick out one of those birds and I show it to them for 3 seconds and they can tell me what it is, we're good. So having imagined that final challenge, I'm now going to build a working prototype of it in Storyline. So right now, I'm building a very basic prototype that represents that skill I want to capture. I'm showing a bird for 3 seconds and you should be able to identify it. This is as close as I'm choosing to get within my constraints, but if I have the resources, I can also make this truer to life by showing a video of the bird flying away. But right now, I'm approximating reality with a picture that disappears. And the other thing you'll notice is that right now it looks like ass, and that's okay because you want to be able to throw things out if it's not working. And I timed myself. It took me 12 minutes to think of this and to prototype it. So that's my final assessment, but of course, nobody's going to be able to succeed at this task without first being trained. So the next thing I do is I design how I'll introduce new information. And here we have the most important and game-changing part of this process, the active learning tactic. We're building this road to mastery, but we want this process to be engaging. So whatever means I use to teach this, you know what I'm going to say, the learner has to be active and they have to be the ones figuring out the birds' names themselves. I'm not giving them the answer over here and having them spit it back at me over here. I want them to figure this out. So to do this, I'll use an active teaching tactic. There's a bunch of these, but for this one, I'm going to use the one I call a Socratic string. And to show you what that looks like, let's look at level 1 right here in the beginning when the learner doesn't know anything and I want to teach him something. So this is what you'd go through in level 1 when you don't know anything yet. Question 1 is easy. Pick the duck. It's a well-known bird. You'll get it right. Same thing for question 2. Pick the chicken. Easy peasy. I'm just getting people used to the interface here. Question 3, here there's a bird you don't know, the blue-footed booby, but it's guessable. I've picked my decoys carefully so that there's only one bird with blue feet, so you get it right. Number 4, same thing, black-necked swan. Only one bird with a black neck, so you get that one right. And at the end, the common hoopoe is neither known nor guessable, but I'm pairing him with 2 known birds and one that you've just learned about, so you get this one right as well. So when you finish this first level, you've been introduced to 5 birds and you got all the questions right, even if you'd never seen these 3 birds before. So once you've gone through that, you've learned something you didn't know, you were active the whole time because you were answering questions, and you had to use a little bit of brain juice. So that's how I'm going to introduce new birds. Again, this will not work for every content type. I picked a Socratic string because it's appropriate for this content. So don't be yelling at me in the comments that this wouldn't work to teach management or macroeconomics. For those things, I'd use a different active teaching tactic. So I've got my Socratic string here where you learned about these birds. Now just because a learner has correctly picked out the common hoopoe in these conditions doesn't mean he's going to be able to ID it on its own in 3 seconds over here. So in between these 2 batches of levels, I've come up with an intermediate activity that lets them see this bird one more time for practice. And again, keeping things simple here, in these practice levels, I'll just have them label the birds. So when you get to this practice level, you've already seen these birds in the Socratic string, and now you're being asked to label them. And now I've got my templates for how I'm going to teach, practice and assess, and my next step is to plan all the levels for my entire game. This initial level, the Socratic string, introduces 5 birds. So in order to introduce 30 birds, I'm going to need 6 of these levels, 6 Socratic strings. As for these final challenge levels, each one of those also contains 5 birds, so I need 6 of those levels to check that you can ID all 30 birds in 3 seconds. For my practice activity, you have to label 5 birds, but I've decided that in each of these levels, I'll present 2 sets of 5 birds. Label these 5 and then label another 5. So each of these levels contains 10 birds. So to cover all the birds, I need 3 of those. So I get a total of 15 levels. That way, learners keep playing with the same content but differently. And to keep things even more fresh, I've decided I'm going to alternate the level types so that they're not doing the same thing too many times in a row. The next step is to gate my levels. That means I'm going to lock my levels and figure out what someone has to achieve in order to move on to the next one. So I come up with a scoring system, and they'll need a certain score on a level to move on to the next. This too is informed by my learning objective. Accuracy and speed are both relevant here, so I'm going to give points for IDing the bird correctly and for doing it quickly. You've got to do both if you want to be perfect. So now I've added my points mechanic based on my scoring system, and I've locked my levels. Now all the cognitive mechanics are done, and if you wanted to, you could just stop here and just make this pretty, and you'd already have something that's more engaging than traditional e-learning. But now we're going to add motivational mechanics, and for this demo I've chosen 3. First, I've decided to add a hint power-up which people can earn by getting a certain number of perfect scores on these levels. When they have a power-up, they can use it to get a hint on a question that they find hard. In this case, if they use it, the game takes away one of the wrong answers. So we've got a power-up, and my second motivational mechanic is a collection book. So once they've correctly identified a specific bird a number of times, it gets put into this book that they can consult. This will also give them one more way of being exposed to the birds and their names. First time they ID the bird, they have its name. Next time the outline, and then the full picture. Finally, I've converted these ugly scores to stars. This is more presentational than motivational, but it makes it clearer which levels they could replay if they want to collect all the stars and earn power-ups. And now that I've got all my mechanics designed, I can create all 15 of my levels. Now notice that I made one template for each level type, one for my introduce, practice, and final check. So when I want to create a new level, I just add it here in the menu and I change the variables. Here I'm telling it what kind of level it is so it knows which template to use. Here I'm setting up the birds that are going to be in this level, and here I'm naming them. This makes it really fast to create a bunch of new levels, so I've built all my remaining levels in under an hour. And now that I've built all my levels, the game is playable from beginning to end, but it still looks pretty basic. But this is my first content complete version that the SMEs can play through to give the final sign off on the content, and once the content is signed off and the game is balanced and debugged, it's time for polish. And for this demo, I thought it'd be cool to make this game look like I'm going through a birdwatcher's journal. So I just bought a bundle of nature art on Creative Market for $29, and I used those assets to replace all my placeholder art. And I chose a font that made it look like handwriting. And by the way, I got these bird pictures for free on Wikimedia. Now, because I'm not an artist myself, this was by far the longest part of the process. It took me almost a day to get everything looking like this, and of course an artist could do it all faster and better, or I could just mess around with it some more, but this is what I've been able to do without being an artist. So overall, this little project took me about 2 days, including the half day I spent messing around with the art, and it cost me $29. I spent no time and energy on a story or characters or trawling the web for a template to try to squeeze my content into. I don't have to second guess myself and wonder if I chose the right idea. The idea came from the content. The resulting game is super basic, but it's engaging and it teaches what you need. Now, if you have a ton of resources, of course you can layer on more complexity, still following the same process, but you don't have to. And if you want to know exactly how to do this and not waste your time on guesswork or gimmicky templates, check out the Effective Gamification framework. This is my hands-on, step-by-step method that includes all the active learning tactics and the motivational mechanics you need to turn any content into engaging, relevant, gamified training. So check it out in the description and share your light bulbs in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.